Hey guys, Dr. Justin Marchegiani here. We're going to be talking about the top 5 ways to naturally boost and support your progesterone levels. We're going to dive into this topic. Before we do, please smash that like button. Really helps the search algorithm. Love to see your comments on the topic below and love to see the ideas for new videos to come. All right, guys, let's dive in. So first off, what's progesterone? Progesterone is a progesterone gestational hormone. So it's really important for pregnancy, but not only pregnancy. You have a month-long cycle, 28 days or so. The first half of this is the follicular phase. The last half is the luteal phase. This is where progesterone, that luteal phase, primarily predominates. And so you have this healthy level of menstruation or a healthy level of progesterone right after menstruation that has to happen every month. And good levels of progesterone are going to help with mood. They're going to help with energy, focus, inflammation. Good levels are going to prevent excessive bleeding, hemorrhagia, PMS, mood issues, cramping, breast tenderness, irritability, the whole 9 yards. So we need good, healthy progesterone to prevent PMS. And progesterone is going to help us with mood and sleep and stress. So a lot of good benefits of that as well. So excited to dive into the top 5 ways that we can naturally boost progesterone. Let's dive in here. Okay, here, out of the gates. So first off, low progesterone levels have major effects on your menstrual cycle. We're going to kind of draw that out and make total sense of it here in a second. Again, big reasons out of the gate. We're going to talk about diet changes that you can make, how to manage stress, herbs that we can do, nutrients, weight and insulin resistance, and then, of course, avoiding a lot of endocrine toxins. We're going to dive into that here. I'm super excited to do that. And before we do, I'm going to draw out what a monthly cycle looks like. I've done this before, but I want to make sure that everyone is super clear what that looks like. All right, so really clear. Out of the gates here, we have our monthly cycle. We're going to do an X and a Y axis. Pretty straightforward. Okay, there we go. So again, this is going to be like your 28-day cycle on average, right? Okay, this is day 1. All right, so typically how a cycle looks is this. We're going to do red for estrogen. So typically what happens first, the first domino that happens is you have your endometrial lining thins out right here. Start to have a sloughing off of your endometrial lining, okay? That's how that looks out of the gates. That's your period right there. Now, the first thing that starts to happen is you start to have that this is your estrogen. It's now flatline like this. You have a bump in what's called FSH, and that starts to trigger your estrogen to go up like this. And so this is about day 10 or so, where your estrogen starts to rise like that. Okay. And then here's going to be progesterone over here. And so progesterone stays flat, stays flat, stays flat. And it starts to go up right about here. And so now this is about day 15, where progesterone predominates. This is going to be where you're ovulating here. Okay. This is going to be ovulation right here. So X marks the spot. We'll draw this out here for you guys. This is ovulation. And now if you follow the rest of the month here, here's how this looks. We get the color back here. We're going to go to red, and we're going to draw the rest of this cycle out. Okay, good. And so how the rest of the cycle looks like this is we're going to have this kind of peter out like this. And then it's going to go down right around day 28 like that. Just so that's really clear. And then we're going to have progesterone come back into the mix. And progesterone is going to come up like this. It's going to peter up really high. It's going to arch all the way up. And then it is going to drop down right like that. That's the goal of progesterone. We want it typically like that. And now what happens to most people is progesterone may fall out early. So let me just kind of redraw this here. Let me draw it in purple. So imagine progesterone falling out early like this. Well, guess what? This is our gap, right? This is what we're missing here with the progesterone. All this is what we miss. All right. Most people have a massive, what's called a luteal phase deficit, or they have a big progesterone gap. All right. And ideally, we want to erase that. We want our progesterone to fall like this. So this is going to be where ovulation is typically right in that area here. me draw that a little bit bigger. We'll just start. Okay. That's going to be your ovulation. This is the only time you can get pregnant. Only about 2 days or so, maybe a day or two on the before side, and then maybe a day or so after or so. That kind of gives you a pretty good idea. And we're going to be talking about strategies to naturally improve this side of the cycle. Hope that makes sense, guys. Okay, so let's go dive back in here. So that being said, dietary adjustments, right? Nutrient density matters. Okay. So we need to have good nutrients present. Zinc is a big, important nutrient. You go into PubMed, you type in zinc and thyroid, zinc and stomach acid, zinc and estrogen, zinc and testosterone. Zinc has a major building block with all of your female and even male hormones. B6 plays a really important role as well. B6 is an important cofactor. It's a rate limiting cofactor for a lot of your neurotransmitters, dopamine, serotonin, melatonin. Very important is that kind of cofactor. And dopamine plays a major important role with progesterone and with stress management. So if we don't have good dopamine levels, we're typically going to have poor progesterone, because dopamine is a feel-good kind of neurotransmitter, helps with focus. But if we are stressed, guess what? Dopamine can get converted to adrenaline downstream. And the more adrenaline we have, typically we're going to have cortisol, and cortisol gets pulled downstream from progesterone. And so just like dopamine can pinch hit for adrenaline, progesterone can pinch hit for cortisol. So we have the stress side on the neurotransmitter for dopamine and adrenaline. We have the hormone side regarding progesterone and cortisol. So they can pinch hit for some of these stress hormones. So eating foods that are nutrient dense, not just zinc and B6, obviously vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin K, a lot of these fat soluble nutrients. But if I'm going to name a few, zinc and B6 are really key. So chickens, a lot of your healthy animal products are going to be ideal. And I would delete here the whole grains, because the problem with whole grains is a lot of nutrients in whole grains, right? And you'll go online, you'll see nutrients there, but the problem is they don't factor in the anti-nutrients. Anti-nutrients make it harder to absorb these things, and also the inflammation of that out of the gates. I was doing some research that pulled in. I left that there as a marker to kind of talk to you guys why that may not be the most ideal thing, because of the anti-nutrients and the inflammation impacting absorption. Again, cholesterol is a really important building block of all of your hormones. It's a precursor to all of it. So if you look at all of your steroid-based hormones, they're all going to be cholesterol-based. There's only a couple that are peptide-based. But even that's protein. Peptides are protein. So those are going to be like more insulin, and growth hormone will be more peptide-based. But all your steroid hormones are going to be more cholesterol-based. So healthy animal products, grass-fed meat, fatty fish, seafood, chicken, beef, etc. Again, on the grass-fed, pasture-fed side, egg yolks are going to be awesome for vitamin A. Really important healthy fats, healthy cholesterol, healthy building blocks for your hormones. And again, we want to avoid the xenoestrogens, whether that's soy, right? We'll talk later on about plastics, chemicals. Really important. Get a good reverse osmosis filter. Half of Texas's water supply has higher than the EPA safe limits of atrazine, which is a herbicide that can impact hormones. They are estrogenic. They essentially can mimic hormones, and they can increase your own production of estrogens, right? It's going to help cause a lot of hormone mimicking. It's going to increase your fat cells, and the more fat cells you have, guess what? The more you're actually going to internally make more estrogen. So it's going to negatively impact a lot of your hormones. Not good. Manage stress. We talked about stress. Why does stress matter? Because we talked about neurotransmitters can go downstream from dopamine to adrenaline. Talked about progesterone can pinch hit for cortisol. So the more stressed we are emotionally, physically, the more we're bringing that progesterone downstream to make cortisol. That's an important thing. The more you pull that downstream, you're going to have less progesterone, and that whole cycle picture that I drew will be lower. And that's going to impact fertility. It's going to impact your monthly cycle, PMS. That's going to impact mood, energy, muscle pain, cramping, the whole 9 yards. So different techniques you can do, right? Get the inflammation down. Figure out where the inflammation is coming from. Is it coming from food? Is it coming from blood sugar, too much carbohydrate? Is it coming from too much activity or just emotional stress? Meditation, deep breathing. I throw in EFT, throw in NLP, throw in any of these techniques to kind of help reduce stress. Getting some movement in there, really important. Herbal supplements. I love supplements. Supplements can move the needle very fast. Of course, supplements sit on a foundation of diet and lifestyle. So that's the foundation. Everything sits there. This goes on top of that. So Our supplements are only as good as the foundation they sit on. So Chase Tree or Vitex, excellent. A lot of these herbs, they're going to work 2 to 3 different ways. They're going to work primarily on the upstream signaling hormones, whether it's gonadotropic releasing hormone from the hypothalamus, or whether it's LH or FSH from the pituitary, whether we're modulating FSH to help with hot flashes, whether we're helping to boost LH via chastry to help with progesterone, whether we're working on things at the receptor site level, like maca, for instance, may help work on things at the receptor site level, and they may also help at the brain with the pituitary and that hypothalamic pituitary gonadal axis, HPG axis. Really important. Some of these herbs will work on cortisol and stress. They'll work on corticotropic releasing hormone, and they'll work on that feedback loop from the pituitary down to the adrenals, right? That HPA axis. So if we have lots of stress, we have corticotropic releasing hormone, corticotropic stimulating, adrenal corticotropic stimulating hormone. So a lot of these hormones upstream at the pituitary and hypothalamus, we can modulate them, right? Sometimes when we get stressed, they can stay elevated for a period of time. And the goal is to kind of send feedback, hey, relax, calm down, calm down, calm down. That way that stress response doesn't last as long. We want to be able to take that stress response and we want to be able to flip it on and off like a light switch. It's like in Mother Nature, for instance, you were either a zebra running from a tiger and you either lived or you died. It was that simple, right? And when you lived, you moved on. You were like chilled, you were ready to go. The problem is we're in this situation where zebras are being chased by lions all day long, all the time, whether it's stress from your boss, sitting in traffic, right? All these different things, inflammatory food. And so we're constantly being attacked by little tigers all day long. So we want to make sure we tell our brain, it's okay, relax, we're okay. It's important to have that good signaling. And again, we'll use bioidentical progesterone. I kind of put that in the supplement form. We'll extract that from wild yam extract. We'll get USP progesterone from that. Works phenomenal. It's a great way to bump up progesterone while we work on fixing the other underlying root causes. Get to the reason why progesterone's low. Fix the stress. Fix the adrenals. Use some herbs because the herbs are going to help on the upstream signaling, but they're also going to help work on the receptor sites downstream, right? So receptor sites are going to help the volume of that hormone work better. So if you have lower estrogen, but you're helping to work on the receptor sites and you're bathing it in maca, that's going to help allow that estrogen or progesterone to work better. Maintaining healthy weight is so important. Why is that? It really comes down to insulin resistance. If you are insulin resistant, that's going to cause all kinds of hormonal issues. When you have high levels of insulin, you're going to grow more fat cells. Fat cells have a endocrine function. They're actually going to produce more estrogen. That's going to make you more estrogen dominant and essentially lower the effects of progesterone in the body. It can also increase prolactin, which can throw off your cycle and cause more androgens. And it can also upregulate 1720 lyase, which is an enzyme that's going to make more androgens. And you can grow ovarian cysts that way, which can cause more cycle issues, number one cause of infertility, and it can cause more cystic acne and abnormal hair growth. If you're a woman, that's not the ideal situation, right? And so a good paleo diet's a good starting point. Again, I like a paleo template because it's really looking at eating old foods that have been around forever. Meats, vegetables, healthy fats, avoiding the Neolithic processed refined grains, flours, trans fats, and excess junky processed omega-6 oils. Really helps. And then again, you can get the carbohydrates dialed in, right? Some people may do better on higher carbs. Some may do better very lower carb. I tend to always tell people to start lower carb and then work your way up because most people are insulin resistant and have metabolic syndrome. Easier to start low than work your way up, and versus start high and then, hey, where do you go from there? Or start in the middle, where do you go, right? Start low, work your way up. Again, if you tend to be more ectomorphic, more lean out of the gates, right? Kind of a basketball player, dancer kind of body, you can start with moderate to higher carbohydrates. Just keep them more whole food. Keep them safe starches, right? Good leafy greens, but safe starches on the starch side and maybe some mid to lower sugar fruit on the other carb side. And low sugar fruit's going to be like green apples, berries, grapefruit. And then your moderate sugar fruits will be like your apples, your regular apples, your oranges, pears. But again, I like a diet that's nutrient-dense, anti-inflammatory, low toxin, and then it's macronutrient agnostic. It's focusing on the food quality, the inflammation aspect, and the nutrient density first, and then you have the ability to customize within that. Fat cells produce estrogen, so increased body fat can increase estrogen levels, thus skewing the estrogen-progesterone ratio. That's a big one. And then avoid endocrine disruptors. I talked about half of Texas has atrazine in the water supply. You can Google this. This is Texas Tribune 2019. Atrazine is a herbicide that negatively impacts your hormones. It's a massive xenoestrogen. It's not a good thing. So everyone should have good, high quality reverse osmosis filtered water to get all this junk out. Add some electrolytes in after the fact. I'd much rather have cleaner water with no electrolytes and add it back versus have extra toxins in there. It's harder to pull toxins out and easier to add electrolytes in. And then BPA, still stay away from BPA-free plastics because it's still BPI or BPS, other type of BP kind of estrogenic compounds that are said to be just as worse as BPA. Whether it's BPI, BPS, stay away from it. You're better off doing stainless steel clean canteen water bottles for on the go or some kind of a Pyrex container for storing your foods. Again, a little bit of plastic here or there, as long as it's not out in the sun, it's in your fridge, it's not that big of a deal. Just don't let food live in there too long, right? If you're going to let it live, more than a couple days, put it in a Pyrex container. If it's going to be in plastic for a day or two and it's in a cool environment and there's no UV rays, not as big of a deal. But ideally, Pyrex, keep it dialed in. Like with my kids, we'll use a stainless steel bento box. There's some plastic ones that we'll do, but if it's only going to be in there for 4 or 5 hours and it's in a cool environment, not a big deal, okay? And again, eat organic. Organic's going to be key because you get more nutritional density, right? Joel Salatin on my podcast a few years ago would send his eggs to the lab and get tested, and he found that he had 20 times more folate than your typical conventional eggs. And so you may pay for eggs at twice the cost, but if you get 20 times the nutrition, is that a good deal? Yeah, that's a good ROI. And again, organic, clean, nutrient dense, low toxin. That's a good starting point. Now, if you guys want to dive in deeper and get more support on why your hormones may be out of balance, there's different tests we can do to look at progesterone, look at estrogen, figure out the exact imbalances or balances that you have. Maybe look at thyroid too. Are you menopausal, perimenopausal? Is there estrogen issues too? Do we have estrogen detoxification issues? It's really important to look at things and not just guess, but fully assess what's going on. And the gut plays a big role because the gut has a major impact on detoxification. And when we have dysbiotic bacteria, we can make more of this enzyme called beta-glucuronidase, which can make it harder to detoxify estrogen. So dysbiotic bad bacteria in the gut can negatively impact how we detoxify estrogen. So really important to keep an eye on that, guys. All right, if you want to dive in deeper, there'll be coordinates down below, links where you can access my team, my staff to kind of get you on the schedule if you want to dive in deeper on the functional medicine side to get to the root cause. Again, if you enjoyed today's video, please let me know in the comments, write us a review, share with friends or family. I appreciate it. All right, guys, Dr. J signing off. Take care. Bye.